What actually is gamer guilt? You know that feeling you have before you've even started a game? Work is done, the kids are in bed, and for 1 second it's just quiet. And then it starts. The dishes from yesterday, that email sitting there unanswered, the thing I keep pushing to tomorrow, the dog who'd love a longer walk than he got this morning. You haven't even loaded into a game yet. If that sounds familiar, this video is for you, because that feeling has a name, gamer guilt. And the more I dug into it, the more I realized almost nobody is talking about where it actually comes from. It's not the same as feeling bad about how a session went, or being frustrated that you didn't have more time. Gamer guilt is that specific feeling of wrongness that shows up before, during, or after gaming. The sense that gaming is something you shouldn't be doing, that the time isn't yours, the feeling like you're getting away with something. And here's what makes it worth examining. Guilt, when it's working properly, is a signal. Something went wrong, something that needed your attention didn't get it. But gamer guilt often comes up when nothing has gone wrong. The duties are done, the people we love are fine. We've earned the time, and we still feel it. So why gaming? Why does this hobby specifically carry that weight? When was the last time you spent an hour reading a book and felt guilty about that? What about binge watching a series? Did you just sit there thinking, should I really be doing this? How about scrolling your phone for 45 minutes before bed? You know, the kind of scrolling where you're not really even looking at anything. Any guilt there? Now tell me, how often have you sat down to play and have at least a flicker of it? That double standard is real, and the question worth asking is, where did it come from? Because gaming is different from other hobbies. The guilt was put there, and to understand how, we should have a brief look into the history of it.
Jerry, video games are the latest craze. Millions of people are addicted to hours of gazing at electronic images.
Gamer guilt was built, layer by layer, over about 4 decades by a culture that didn't know what to make of video games, and in the absence of understanding, defaulted to suspicion. 3 eras, not to be angry about them, but because understanding them is how you start to hear how much of that internal voice is actually yours.
Parents decrying them, even the Surgeon General saying last week that in his opinion they might be hazardous to physical and mental health.
Video games, in a sense, are addictive.
The person's peer relationships, source of self-esteem, enjoyment in life, are wrapped up in video games.
Is it fair to blame juvenile delinquency on the video game craze?
Watching the kids play, seeing the intensity of their interest, the word obsession comes to mind. This girl's mother doesn't like the game.
Because she thinks that you're going brain dead while you're watching it.
Maybe you will be brain dead from staring at this thing all the time.
It kind of bothers me that my son, unless I drag him away from the TV, is there playing it all day long.
It's like a fantasy. It's a toy. And it is not. It's just make-believe.
Training our young people to basically become a society of warriors, we're thinking is very harmful to our society and our society's future.
Are they reduced to violent behavior? That's a question that hasn't really been explored very deeply, despite the video game invasion that's captured our pop culture.
Most recently, we found that 89% of the video games and video arcades are based upon a violent theme, and that 65% of the video cassettes sold for home video games are based upon a violent theme.
The first panic about video games started almost as soon as arcades appeared. By 1982, news segments were running pieces about children supposedly addicted to Pac-Man. Kids were described as zombie-like, brain dead. Parents were warned, psychiatrists were consulted. But the panic that really shaped a generation was the violence debate. When Mortal Kombat came to home consoles in 1993, and parents saw their kids performing digitalized fatalities in the living room, it triggered something much bigger.
Video games have leapt out of the arcade and into the home. Back in the early days of video games, parents and officials were concerned games like Space Invaders would make kids more violent. Imagine what they'd think if they saw today's Grand Theft Auto.
The most horrible depictions of graphic violence and sex. Instead of enriching a child's mind, these games teach a child to enjoy inflicting torture. Blood splatters from the contestants' heads. The player may then choose a method of murder, ranging from ripping a heart out to pulling off the head of the opponent with spinal cord attached.
It comes with a special piece of hardware. And what does this game seem to teach our kids? Basically, that a gun can solve any problem.
Isn't making a game and selling it that encourages a kid to point a gun at a television set encouraging criminality? I mean, we're all aware of this incredible outbreak of gun violence in our country. Is it responsible?
Those December 1993 Senate hearings were dramatic. Politicians held up game controllers on camera. They screened footage. Senator Lieberman called games sick and violent. And the message that landed in millions of households was clear. These things are dangerous, bad for your children. The damage to the cultural standing of gaming was done. A generation of kids grew up being told that what they loved was harmful, immature, and something to grow out of. The violence panic eventually faded, but the stigma didn't. It evolved into something else, which in some ways was even more cruel. By the mid-2000s, the dominant image of games and gamers wasn't dangerous anymore. It was pathetic. The teens dwelling in the basement, the no-lifers, the guy in his 30s who still plays games instead of getting on with actual adult responsibilities, a job, a relationship, a mortgage. So common it became a cliche, an insult, a punchline.
They must have no lives at all. A hope, a chance.
Dude, my mouse clicking finger hurts. Keep clicking, pal. You can do it.
World of Warcraft became the focal point, not because WoW was uniquely dangerous, but because it gave the culture a very visible story to tell. WoW Widow became a genuine cultural phrase. It showed up in columns, in court cases, in news segments. And the framing wasn't addiction either, it was abandonment. He's choosing a fake world over his real responsibilities. The message embedded in all of that wasn't you're being harmed by games. It was even worse. Gaming is showing everyone who you really are, and who you are is pathetic. Someone who hasn't grown up, someone who's not contributing to society. That's the version of the stigma your brain absorbed during the years when you were forming your identity. Your teens, your 20s, your early 30s. And that voice that says, shouldn't you be doing something more productive? It isn't yours. It was embedded there.
Recent report by the World Health Organization in Geneva, which classifies gaming disorder as a mental health condition, has created a perfect storm. in terms of press outrage.
So what are doctors saying about it? Health reporter Stephanie Stahl is here to tell us.
I have a lot to say, that's for sure.
All video games can be addictive. During the time that you're either playing it or using it, the bad feelings in your brain goes away and good feelings comes on.
Prince Harry joins a growing number of parents who are worried about potential dangers linked to kids playing Fortnite.
In my experience, even as a clinician and an addiction psychiatrist, I think that I am concerned about what I'm seeing with Fortnite.
Because of this game, there has been divorces and people can't get their children out of this game and they sit there like zombies, don't do their homeworks and so on.
The former fun-loving royal, now playing protective father,
saying the video game Fortnite should be banned.
The popular video game should be banned because it's addictive.
Fortnite should be banned because it's addictive. We should also point out it's not just Fortnite. There are a lot of other video games that kids can get addicted to.
Right. And not just kids, right?
Yeah, adults too.
The third layer arrived with a kind of institutional authority the first two didn't have. In 2018, the World Health Organization classified gaming disorder as a recognized mental health condition, and the mainstream media ran with it. The same year, 200 UK divorce petitions cited Fortnite as a contributing factor. Fortune covered it, CNBC covered it. It became a story about gaming as something that destroys marriages. Then, in 2019, Prince Harry stood at the London YMCA and said Fortnite should be banned, that it was created to addict and was so irresponsible. The WHO definition for a gaming disorder actually requires significant life impairment over at least 12 months to qualify. It is describing a small percentage of people with a real clinical problem. It is not describing you playing something for an hour or two after work or when the kids are asleep. But that nuance doesn't make the headlines. What makes the headlines is gaming is an addiction. And for anyone already carrying the old layers of guilt, the childhood messaging, the social failure narrative, this gave it a new layer. Now the voice doesn't just say, "You're being immature." It says, "You might have a problem."
Is this whole thing a moral panic?
It is. Every couple of years this kind of rolls around. The newspapers like to give games a bit of grief.
3 eras, 3 different accusations. And the thing is, they don't replace each other. They stack. The person sitting down to game tonight is, on some level, carrying all 3 at once. The childhood voice that said games make you brain dead and violent. The social voice that said adults don't play games. And the modern voice that says you might be sick, addicted. None of those voices are accurate about a person playing responsibly. But they're loud. And they've been building for 40 years. Before we go further, I want to say something that I think matters. Gamer guilt isn't always wrong. Sometimes the alarm is working exactly as intended. If gaming is displacing things and people that matter to you, if it's becoming a way to avoid something real, that's worth taking seriously. I'm not here to tell you the guilt is always just noise. And sometimes stepping back from gaming for a while is the right call. Not because the guilt was correct, but because life shifts. But there's a difference between guilt as an accurate signal and guilt as a reflex. The guilt that pops up the second you sit down to play, before you've even done anything, before you've even considered whether you actually owe the time to something else. That's the reflex. That's the accumulated weight of 40 years of cultural messaging, not an actual alarm. One of those deserves your attention. The other you can set aside. Let's actually make the affirmative case, not as a defense, just honestly. When you watch 4 episodes of something, your brain is processing, but you're not making decisions. You're not reacting. You're not solving anything. You are receiving. When you play, you're doing all those things simultaneously. Spatial reasoning, problem solving, resource management, real-time decision making. The research on the cognitive benefits of gaming is stronger than most people realize. There's plenty of it, and it covers things from eye-hand coordination, working memory, to stress response. These aren't minor things. That's the difference. Games immerse you. You're actively participating, shaping the outcomes. The relief comes from actually doing something. Making decisions, solving problems, being in control of something, rather than just watching. That's a different kind of rest. The thing we feel most guilty about is often the thing that's actively engaging us, while the things we don't feel guilty about, the doom scrolling the 4th episode in a row, are the ones where we're most checked out. There's something little backwards about that. Now, gamer guilt doesn't feel the same for everyone. The version you carry depends a lot on what your life actually looks like. There was a Reddit thread I saw a little while ago. The original poster was 36, married, had a 19-month-old at home, and had been gaming since he was 5. And he wrote something a lot of you dads will recognize almost word for word. Every time I sit down to play, I just feel guilty. Like I should be spending this time differently. Like I'm being selfish. Over 200 replies. And what struck me wasn't the post. It was what the community said back. There was one person saying, "Would you feel guilty going for a run? Reading a book? It's the same thing." And someone else said, 3 hours for yourself means you can give more for the other 21. You're not a worse parent for having something that's yours. Another reply that stayed with me, gaming isn't the culprit. It's about priorities. It comes after the duties, not instead of them. And if the duties are done, the guilt isn't rational. That framing, gaming after, not instead, isn't permission to neglect anything. It's permission to stop punishing yourself or taking care of yourself once the things that do need to be taken care of actually have been.
The ladies here are part of a growing number of women getting into video games, now nearly half the market.
This one is really cool because
37-year-old Amy Allison squeezes in games during her daily routine. No longer just toys for the boys. This multi-billion-dollar business is gaining new ground with girls of all ages.
This one needs its own moment because the mechanism is different. There's a strong cultural ideal of a good mother. And I mean the version that lives in the air, in the way people talk, that defines her as someone who consistently puts the needs of others first, not occasionally, consistently, as a defining characteristic. And gaming bumps up against that ideal because it's for you. I came across a number while researching this that stopped me cold. About 1 in 6 women who game don't tell people. Not strangers. People. Their partners, friends, family. They keep it quiet, specifically to avoid the judgment. Not 1 in 6 who feel vaguely awkward about it. 1 in 6 who actively hide it. And then there was this. 85% of mothers in one survey said they had no hobbies, while their partners did. A hobby so shadowed with guilt that the majority of mothers have given theirs up, or never allowed themselves one in the first place. This isn't a guilty pleasure. This is self-care with a controller. The hour you take after the kids are asleep, the 30 minutes on a Saturday morning. That is legitimate, valuable, entirely yours. And you don't need to justify it to anyone. One last thing on this. There's a gap worth naming. Around half of women say gaming is a core part of who they are. But only about a third will use the word gamer to describe themselves. Because that label has been coded for decades as belonging to someone else. Young, male, hardcore. Not a mom of two who plays after bedtime. If that's you, the label is yours if you want. And if you don't want it, that's completely fine. Labels don't change what's real. If you play, you play. That's enough. And then there's the version of this that has nothing to do with parenting at all. You work, you have a life, relationships, responsibilities, a full schedule. And still, when you mention you spent the weekend gaming, there's a particular kind of pause. Slight recalibration. Oh, you're still into that? The grow-up version of the stigma doesn't require kids in the equation. It just requires that someone around you or a voice inside you has absorbed the idea that gaming is something you're supposed to grow out of. And the people implying it will often go home and watch 3 hours of television without a second thought. Because that's what adults do. Gaming, in some corners of our culture, is still a toy. And toys are for kids. Even when you're 38 and it's the thing that resets your nervous system after a hard week. You don't owe anyone an explanation for that. I do want to end on something that actually makes me smile. In that same Reddit thread, there were parents talking about gaming with their kids. With them, co-op sessions, a shared language, something that grew out of a hobby that for years felt like something they should be hiding. Someone mentioned their daughter. She'd been watching them play since she was small. Started playing herself, and by 12 had saved up her own money for a Steam Deck. Gaming isn't necessarily time away from your family. For a lot of people, it becomes a bridge, a thing you share with the people you love. 5 or 10 years from now, in ways you can't quite predict tonight, when you're just trying to squeeze in 45 minutes before bedtime. The time you spend now is real. The enjoyment is real. And pushing through the guilt to protect a little of that matters.
For most of us who play games, the negative headlines in the press don't reflect our experience. For us, games are an entertainment form as creative and vital as movies or music.
One last thing. 1993 Senate hearings caused a moral panic that left a mark on a generation of players who grew up feeling like something they loved was shameful. One thing did come out of those hearings worth mentioning. The ESRB, the Entertainment Software Rating Board, came directly out of that moment as a condition of the industry avoiding government regulation. It's not perfect, but it gives parents a tool for making informed decisions about what their kids play. Something useful came out of something badly handled.
What's the difference between fantasy violence and just regular violence?
That's a great question. Fantasy violence is easily distinguishable from real life.
Okay, so like the monster fighting.
Exactly, that's not something you'd see in real life. That's the sort of information we have on ESRB.org, where we have rating summaries that parents can review for details about exactly why a game was rated what it was rated.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's lots of things parents can do with the ratings. They can set parental controls on the system and limit the types of content their kids have access to, like I used to do when you were younger.
I remember.
Of course, playing together is a great way to see what you're up to.
I mention it because I don't want this to land as just a long list of things that went wrong. It is a long list of things that went wrong, but we're still here. You're still playing. And the guilt, most of it, was never yours to carry.
First of all, we need to make it very clear that playing video games, it doesn't mean at all that this person, even if intense gaming, has a gaming disorder.
When you have the time, don't just play. Play without guilt and enjoy it. Leave a like and subscribe if you want more content made for you, the mom gamers, the dad gamers, the people fitting gaming around real life. It goes a long way for a channel this size. And if you want to support directly, there's a Ko-fi link down in the description. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.